This is the first one of a pair of artworks that have been sent. My first big critique of this one is that it looks really good. The problem I have is the shape in the background, this kind of dirty brown. One, it doesn't highlight the objects in front of it, and the other is the color is a little bit off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that image. Here it is here, and for a start I'm going to try a hue and saturation. I'm going to try and colorize it. So if I colorize it, I can bump it back to a blue. I can change the saturation down. I can try lightening it. So we're looking at this image here, and it still doesn't quite have enough definition. If I look at the rest of the image, we've got this kind of dot screen line work in the background, and to change this to a graphic might enhance it a wee bit. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go image, duplicate, and I'll try and switch everything else off. So I have just that image, so I'll switch off all the other layers just to try and isolate it. So if I have that, I can now go image mode, grayscale, discards all the color information, and then I'll go mode, bitmap. It's going to ask to flatten it because I haven't done that yet. 3 times up, so if it's 200 as the input, I have about 600. Halftone screen, I'll go OK, and I'm going to have it on a line, and I'll try the frequency on 11. That's pretty good. So I'll select all, I'll cut it. I don't need that image anymore, so I can just close it and don't save it. I don't want to save over the top. And then with this, I'll come in here. I'll make a new layer. It's clipped at the moment, so I'll just unclip it. I'll paste it, and you can see it comes up really big. So I command minus down. So when I go command T, I can scale it to about the right size. I go OK. Once I've got that, I'll select all, command, which is command A, command X to cut it, and I'm going to jump into the channels, make a new channel, and I'll paste it. So command V to paste. Command I is going to invert it because it's this white that I want to fill with a colour. I'll hit the selection tool to select it, go back to my layers, I'll come in here, and actually what I'll do is I'll go command plus, and I'll choose a colour out of here. So I'll get the eyedropper tool, I'll click on this blue, I'll just darken it up a wee bit, and then I'll go option delete to fill it. If I go command D, I'll have that colour there. Now with this, I'm going to switch off the brown so I can see it. The hue and saturation I don't need anymore, so I'll get rid of that. I can clip the lightness to it. The colour's still a wee bit off, so I'm just going to click and pick a darker blue, go OK, and then option, shift keeps the transparency, hit delete, and it colours it a wee bit too purpley. I do want a blue, option shift delete. Yeah, that's looking at a wee bit better. I can come in here and I can go, I'll try multiplying it. Go through some of these. See, darken colour. Looks pretty good. So immediately this starts to highlight these objects in the front, and it adds in that kind of graphic quality. So I'll leave that for the time being, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a look at this second image and see how it ties in. So so the tie-in isn't quite so much. I've still got this dot screen in the background, so with this image I'm going to play around with this a bit and see if I can tidy it up and tighten it up a bit so it links in with this image a wee bit more. So first thing I'm going to do is the picture of the person looks a little bit odd. I know if I flick this open it'll be a combination. I mean, it's really good masking, the body, the head, different things kind of put together, but it still has a kind of an oddness to it. So I'm going to switch that one off, and I'm going to get rid of the type. The type has a kind of awkwardness to it, and I'll just work with something that's a little plainer at the moment. So I'm going to grab the Wellington and move it down. The tree, I'll do the same thing. I'll grab that, move it down a bit, and what I'm going to do is I quite like this dotty screen, so I'm going to go Command T, and I'm going to try and cover the whole image with that dot screen pattern. So with this now, I think what I'll do is I'll get the tree and I'll scale it up a bit, hit return, and I'll just grab the Wellington now. I'll try and scale that up somewhat as well. I'll have it running off the bottom. So it's looking a wee bit more interesting, this dot screen. I might see what happens if I drag that up above everything else. I like the effect it takes, the clarity of some of these other things, putting the screen across the top. Now it's a little wee bit too solid, so if I double click Wellington, I'm going to take the top image, I'm going to take the darker areas away because the lightest area is going to be Wellington. So if I hold down the Option key and split it, I can make that a little bit more subtle, still readable. You can still see the whites, but we're getting a nicer pattern down the bottom here. So I'll go OK, and I'm going to pull this away so that I can see the image compared to the other one. So this one has a lot more dottiness, and this has a certain amount of clarity with the foreground images. So it's still needs a wee bit of work. So I want to try and add a wee bit more clarity in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to the web for a second, and I'm going to do an image search for clouds. Tools, just going to make sure it's a large image, and I quite like the look of this one here, so I'll grab it, Control. If I open in a tab, it's going to show me the big image, and now I'm just going to click and drag on that. I'm going to drag it on the icon of Photoshop so that it just jumps up into Photoshop. So what I'll do here is I will select all, Command A, I'll go edit, transform, and I'll go flip 90 degree, edit, transform, I'll go flip vertical, so it's upside down. Now this I want to mask out, so the best way to get rid of the sky is if I go select, color range, then I can just click on the blue, and I can see with this that it gets rid of most of it, but there's still a little bit of grey around here, so if I get the plus, I can add that selection, trying to knock out those greys a little bit coming through here. It's okay. I'll go OK, and then I'll hit the mask tool. It needs to be the other way around, so just click on the mask and I go Command I, and then I've got this. I can see there's a little bit of a blue halo, but I won't worry about that at the moment because I think it'll probably change it a wee bit. So I'll just okay, now that I've got this image, I can drag it over. It's come right down the bottom here, so I'm just going to drag it right up to the top above everything else, and I'm just going to scale it so it goes right across that page. Command T. And let's have a look at it in comparison to the other image. Okay, it's bringing in a bit more definition. It's a little bit odd, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this, and I'm going to let the dots come through on the darker area. You can see them starting to come through now. Option, split, so I'm keeping the whites, and I'm just letting those dots seep through in the darkest area. I can try some of this functionality, multiplying everything, the screening, but I think at the moment I'll just leave it as normal. So they could still be tied in with each other a wee bit more. And so the big difference here is the clarity of this background in comparison to the dots here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump for a second. I'm going to jump back to this image, and I'm going to try switching everything off except for this background, and I'm going to try and run that through as a slightly coarser dot screen. So again, I'll go duplicate, and I'm just going to go flatten image mode, and actually I'll go mode grayscale before I change it into a bitmap, and I might just with Command L give it a wee bit more contrast so that those dots have more of an effect. Image mode bitmap. Okay, 3 times up, 200 and 600, that's good. I'll change it to dots. Maybe I'll try 15 for the frequency. Yeah, I quite like. Actually, I'll go Command Z, and I'll just go mode bitmap, and I'll take the frequency down to 10. Just trying to get dots that are a little bit coarser, so it adds in with this image here. So I'll go Command All, I'll cut it, I'll close it and not save it because I don't need it anymore. And with this image here, we're looking at these ones down here, so I'll make a new layer. I'll paste it. Of course, because of the resolution, it's going to be really big, so I'll Command minus it down. I'll go Command T, and I'll drag it back in so it fits that page a little. Command plus, just to see how close I'm getting with that edge. return, and then I go select all. I'll cut it because I want to put it through the channels. I'll go channels, I'll make a new channel, I'll paste it, and I'll go Command I, invert it for the filling. I'll load the selection, go to the layers, and I'm just going to go Option Delete. At the moment it's filled it with blue. I can switch all this off so I can kind of see the purple. I'll try it with that purple, so I'll click and get that color, and then if I click back up here, my layer can go Option, Shift to keep the transparency and delete. And then I'm just going to switch off these other images. So I've just got this dot screen now for the background image, and then I can come in here and I can click this other stuff on and see how it's starting to look. Now I can, it's right at the bottom, so I might move it up a little bit. All I'm doing is I'm putting it above these cups, and now I'll go multiply, color, and it's not looking quite so great. So what is going on here? And if I look at this image, it looks like it's got solid white in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try changing that into a bitmap and see if I can get a little more play going on. So if I select all of this and I cut it and I go into the channels, make a new channel, and I paste it, Command I to get the opposite, and I load it up again, come into the layers, and now I'm gonna pick the blue off the Havana lettering cup there, and I'll go Option Delete, Command D, and at the moment it's on overlay, so you can see if it's on normal, multiply, color burn. Color burn's quite nice, darken's pretty good. So I'm just going through and seeing if I can find something that works really well. I might just go up to darker color. I'll swap it with this other image and see if it makes much of a difference with one being over top of the other. I like it a little bit more when it goes behind. And then what I'm going to do is this feels like it has more white space kind of seeping into it. So if I click on this purple dotty screen and I add a mask, I'm going to see now what happens if I get a brush. I've got black as my foreground color, 100%. See if I can add a little bit more white space kind of coming into it. Swap them around again. No, it still looks nicer, I think, because you get, if I have a look at this cup, you'll see what I mean. There's an interesting overlay of textures. You can see I'll just change this so that it's easier to see what's going on. We get these kind of dark, these kind of dots over the top. If I swap it around, you lose that a little bit. I quite like that added texture that it adds in. So I've got this. There's a few bits where the lines come over the top of the hand. I quite like that though. And things are starting to pull back together, fill in a bit. So they're definitely looking like more of a pairing now. The thing we're missing off this is the Four Seasons text. So rather than what we had before, the kind of punky patching together of text, I've quickly scribbled out with a paint pen this thing here, so I'm going to select all, cut it, make a new channel. I'll start with white in this. Actually, I can just paste the whole thing. Command V. Now I'm going to go Command L, see if I can lighten this up a wee bit, give it more contrast, and then the easiest thing now to get rid of this grey is to come in here and get the dodge tool. It's on 11%, so I can probably bump it up a wee bit. Nice soft brush. And you can see how it cleans everything up. Command I to get the inverse. I'll load that selection, go to my layers, a new layer, and I'm just going to Option delete, fill it with blue for a second, and whoops, and now if I drag that across, and what I'm going to try and do, if I can select the color of this, okay, off the coffee cup, Option Shift delete. I kind of like the huge text, but let's just scale it down a wee bit, so Command T. And I'll run through some of these options. It's quite nice, the multiply, so is linear burn, multiply, linear burn. Linear burn makes it a little wee bit stronger. Let's flick through some of these others. Let's try linear burn. And maybe Command T. I'll just try scaling it a little bit more. So what I'm trying to do with this this text is I'm trying to get something that in a way replicates the wind, give it some kind of movement. So I've written it in a certain fashion with a paintbrush pen rather than the text before that was sitting a wee bit too flat. So I'm going to just move this out a little bit more, Command 0, so I can see them side by side. Oops. So I can start to see how they're looking as a set. Let's make sure this one's in the window. Do this so I can get them a bit closer together. And you know, there's still a bit of difference. Maybe this tree here, I could come into the tree. I'll just switch the collage around, find that trees in there. So if I come and have a look, tree, I'll see what happens if I duplicate this and I put it right back up at the top. It has pass through at the moment. Let's see what happens if I do it as normal. And then what I can do with this is I can actually add a mask, and then I can control it a wee bit. So I can say, okay, if I get a paintbrush again, maybe I'll take it back to that big brush that I made at an earlier stage. Oops. Oh, it's getting a little bit hard to see. Okay, I'll just go with graphite, and then with this, I'll just grab my picture that I lost for a second, and I'm going to say, okay, black, and I'm going to mask into it. So I'm now getting a wee bit of control where I'm letting the dots in, but not completely. You can see there's a little bit of the green coming through, and I might leave that because it ties in with the kind of photographic element of what's happening over here with the coffee cups. Stretch that. Whoops. Back out. Look at them together, and I'm going to go with that.